In the autumn of 2016, an electrochemical engineer named Dr. Susan Hartwell was 18 months into a Department of Energy-funded research position at Argonne National Laboratory outside Chicago, one of the premier battery research institutions in the United States, when her department received an unusual inquiry from a field researcher at the University of Illinois Extension Service named Paul Graber, who had been conducting an agricultural technology survey across Lagrange County, Indiana, one of the largest Old Order Amish settlement concentrations in the country. Graber's inquiry contained a photograph and a question. The photograph showed an electrical storage system installed in the basement of an Amish farmhouse in the Shipshawana Township area of Lagrange County. The question was this: what is the theoretical service life of a lead antimony deep cycle battery cell constructed to the specifications visible in this photograph, operated under the charge and discharge conditions documented in the attached field notes? Hartwell looked at the photograph for a long time before she answered. What Graber had photographed was not a commercial battery. It was not a manufactured product of any kind. It was a hand-assembled electrochemical storage cell constructed inside a salvaged glass jar, a standard half-gallon mason jar of the type used for home canning across rural America, using lead plates cast from salvaged wheel weights, a sulfuric acid electrolyte mixed from battery acid and distilled water, and antimony added to the lead plate alloy in a specific ratio that Graber's field notes indicated the farmer had learned from his father, who had learned it from his father before him. The cell in the photograph was not new. The farmer had told Graber it had been in continuous service, charging from a small wind generator and discharging to farm lighting loads since 1974, 42 years of continuous cycling at the time of Graber's visit. No capacity replacement. No electrolyte replenishment beyond occasional distilled water addition to compensate for evaporative loss. No plate sulfation failure of the kind that kills commercial lead-acid batteries within 3 to 5 years of similar service. Hartwell answered Graber's question. She told him that based on the plate composition and construction geometry visible in his photograph, the theoretical service life of that cell under the documented operating conditions was not 42 years. It was indefinite. What Dr. Hartwell's electrochemical analysis identified in Paul Graber's photograph is a battery construction methodology that the Lagrange County Amish communities had preserved from a specific period of American electrical history that the modern battery manufacturing industry has spent considerable effort making consumers forget existed. Between 1880 and 1935, the 5 decades before sealed maintenance-free battery construction became the commercial standard, American electrical engineers and independent inventors developed and refined hand-assembled lead-acid battery configurations that prioritized service life and repairability over manufacturing convenience and replacement cycle revenue. The most significant of those refinements was the lead-antimony plate alloy. Pure lead plates in a sulfuric acid electrolyte are mechanically soft. They deform under the expansion and contraction stress of repeated charge and discharge cycling. The deformation causes active material to shed from the plate's surface into the electrolyte as sediment, a process called shedding that progressively reduces the plate's active surface area and therefore its storage capacity. A pure lead battery loses capacity through shedding at a rate that makes it economically obsolete within 3 to 5 years of regular cycling, regardless of how carefully it is operated. Adding antimony to the lead plate alloy at a concentration of between 4 and 11% by weight transforms the mechanical properties of the plate completely. Lead antimony alloy is significantly harder than pure lead. It resists the deformation that causes shedding. Its crystal structure accommodates the volumetric changes of charge and discharge cycling without mechanical fatigue accumulation. The trade-off is that lead antimony plates produce slightly more water electrolysis during charging, requiring periodic distilled water addition to maintain electrolyte level. The modern battery industry eliminated that maintenance requirement by switching to calcium alloy plates that require no water addition. Calcium alloy plates are also significantly less mechanically robust than antimony plates. The average commercial automotive battery with calcium alloy plates has a design service life of 3 to 5 years. The Lagrange County cell that Graber photographed had been cycling for 42 years on antimony plates that its owner periodically topped with distilled water from the farm well. The battery industry did not switch from antimony to calcium because calcium performed better. It switched because calcium eliminated the maintenance visit, the moment when a customer interacted with their battery and potentially decided to repair it rather than replace it. A battery that requires no maintenance is a battery whose degradation is invisible until it fails completely and must be replaced. If the distance between a $5 mason jar battery that lasts indefinitely and a $10 zero-zone Tesla Powerwall that requires replacement after 10 years makes you want to understand what the energy storage industry needs you not to build in your basement. Subscribe now, because this channel documents exactly that distance with primary sources you can verify and construction specifications you can act on. The electrochemical construction of the Lagrange County cell that Hartwell analyzed from Graeber's documentation begins with the plate alloy composition, the variable that determines service life more than any other single factor in lead-acid battery construction. The antimony concentration that Hartwell back-calculated from the plate hardness visible in the photograph's surface texture and the service life data in Graeber's field notes falls between 6 and 8% antimony by weight, a range that materials science literature identifies as the optimal compromise between mechanical hardness and electrolytic water consumption rate. Below 4% antimony, the mechanical benefit is insufficient to prevent long-term shedding. Above 11% antimony, the increased water electrolysis rate accelerates plate corrosion on the positive electrode and limits service life through a different degradation pathway. The plate casting process that the Lagrange County builder used to produce the lead antimony electrodes documented in Graeber's field notes is not a metallurgical operation requiring specialized equipment. It is a foundry process that any rural workshop with a propane burner, a cast iron pot, and a sand casting form can execute in an afternoon. The lead source that the Lagrange County farmer used, and that his father and grandfather had used before him, was salvaged wheel weights. The automotive wheel weight is a standardized lead antimony alloy slug manufactured to precise composition for its balancing application. Standard clip-on wheel weights manufactured before 2011, when the automotive industry began transitioning to zinc and steel weights for environmental reasons, contain between 3 and 6% antimony by weight in a lead matrix. Combined with a supplemental antimony addition from salvage type metal, the lead antimony tin alloy used in traditional printing type, available from salvage dealers and antique print shops, the Lagrange County builder achieved his target plate alloy composition of 6 to 8% antimony without purchasing a single refined metal product. The casting process begins with melting the combined lead and type metal charge in a cast iron pot over a propane burner at approximately 650 degrees Fahrenheit, the minimum temperature at which the alloy flows freely enough to fill a sand casting form without cold shuts or voids. The sand casting form for a standard plate is a simple two-part wooden frame packed with fine casting sand, impressed with a plate pattern that includes the grid structure, the intersecting ribs that hold the active material paste, and provide electrical connection from the plate surface to the terminal lug. The grid pattern in the Lagrange County plates, which Graeber measured from his photograph at approximately 3 16-inch rib width and 1 2-inch grid spacing, provides sufficient mechanical support for the active material while minimizing the total lead antimony mass required per plate and therefore the material cost per unit of storage capacity. The active material applied to the cast grid is lead oxide paste, a mixture of red lead oxide powder and dilute sulfuric acid that forms a stiff paste applied to the grid faces and cured through a controlled oxidation process called formation cycling. Lead oxide is produced directly from the casting operation's surface dross, the oxidized lead that forms on the surface of the molten alloy in the casting pot and is skimmed off before pouring. That dross is approximately 85% lead oxide by weight, ground to a fine powder and mixed with dilute sulfuric acid at a ratio of approximately 3.5 grams of oxide per milliliter of acid. It produces the active material paste that both the positive and negative plates of a lead-acid cell require. Formation cycling, the initial charge and discharge sequence that converts the raw lead oxide paste into the active electrochemical materials of a functional cell, requires connecting the assembled cell to a low-rate charging source for approximately 72 hours of continuous charge-discharge cycling. The Lagrange County farmer used his wind generator directly for this purpose, connecting the new cell to the generator output through a simple current-limiting resistor constructed from a length of nichrome resistance wire to prevent overcharge during the formation period. After 72 hours of formation cycling, the plates have converted to their active states, lead dioxide on the positive plate and sponge lead on the negative plate, and the cell delivers its rated voltage and capacity. The separator that prevents internal short circuits between adjacent positive and negative plates in the Lagrange County cell is the component that most visibly distinguishes the construction from any commercial battery product manufactured after 1950. Commercial cells use extruded microporous polyethylene or polypropylene separators, synthetic polymer sheets manufactured in continuous roll form and cut to plate dimensions during automated assembly. The Lagrange County cell uses a separator cut from borosilicate glass fiber mat, the same material sold as fiberglass insulation batting, available from any building supply store, cut to plate dimensions with scissors. Glass fiber mat is chemically inert in sulfuric acid electrolyte, dimensionally stable across the full operating temperature range of a lead-acid cell, and sufficiently porous to allow free electrolyte circulation between plates while preventing physical contact between opposite polarity plate faces. Hartwell's analysis confirmed that the glass fiber separator material in the Lagrange County cell showed no chemical degradation after 42 years of sulfuric acid immersion. The polyethylene separators used in commercial sealed batteries show measurable oxidative degradation within 5 to 8 years of sulfuric acid exposure under charged cycling conditions, a degradation pathway that contributes to the internal short-circuit failures that end commercial battery service life. The glass fiber separator does not share that degradation pathway. It cannot oxidize an acid. It has no finite acid exposure service life. The electrolyte mixing ratio that Hartwell identified as optimal for the antimony plate chemistry of the Lagrange County cell is a specific gravity of 1,265 measured at 77 degrees Fahrenheit, a sulfuric acid concentration of approximately 36% by weight in distilled water. This concentration falls at the upper end of the standard lead-acid electrolyte range and is appropriate for the antimony plate alloy because the slightly elevated acid concentration promotes the complete plate formation conversion that maximizes initial capacity while remaining below the concentration threshold at which accelerated positive plate corrosion becomes a significant life-limiting factor for antimony alloy grids. The electrolyte additive documented in the 1923 Edison Electric Institute Technical Bulletin that reduces plate sulfation rate by an additional 40% beyond what the antimony alloy alone achieves is not a synthetic chemical compound. It is not a proprietary formulation. It is a naturally occurring organic acid that was identified by Edison's battery research team during their investigation of long-life stationary battery configurations for telephone exchange and telegraph office backup power applications, installations where battery replacement was extraordinarily expensive due to remote location, and where service life measured in decades rather than years was the primary engineering objective. The additive is lignosulfonate, a water-soluble organic compound derived from wood pulp processing that occurs naturally in the lignin fraction of any woody plant material, and that can be extracted in functional concentration from a simple wood ash and water solution prepared from the ash of any hardwood fire. Edison's 1923 bulletin documented that lignosulfonate addition to lead-acid electrolyte at a concentration of between 0.1 and 0.3% by weight produced a measurable reduction in the rate of lead sulfate crystal growth on negative plate surfaces during the discharge cycle, the crystallization process that causes progressive sulfation and capacity loss in lead-acid cells cycled repeatedly to deep discharge states. The mechanism is adsorption. Lignosulfonate molecules adsorb onto the surface of forming lead sulfate crystals and interrupt their growth at an early stage, producing small, fine-grained sulfate crystals that reconvert readily to sponge lead during the subsequent charge cycle rather than large, coarse crystals that resist reconversion and accumulate as permanent capacity loss. The effect compounds over thousands of cycles. A cell without lignosulfonate addition accumulates irreversible sulfation progressively with each deep discharge cycle. A cell with lignosulfonate addition accumulates sulfation at a rate 40% lower, extending the cycle life over which the cell maintains its rated capacity proportionally. The practical source of lignosulfonate for the Lagrange County battery builder is the same source Edison's research team identified as adequate for stationary battery applications in 1923. Hardwood ash dissolved in distilled water at approximately 1 tablespoon of ash per quart of water, filtered through a cloth to remove insoluble particulates, and added to the electrolyte at a ratio of approximately 1 part ash solution to 9 parts prepared electrolyte, produces a lignosulfonate concentration within the effective range documented in Edison's bulletin. The ash solution costs nothing on a farm where hardwood fires are the primary heating source. The distilled water is produced as a byproduct of the masonry heater condensate collection system documented in our earlier investigations. The complete mason jar cell assembly sequence proceeds in 6 steps. Step 1 is jar preparation, a standard half-gallon borosilicate glass canning jar cleaned with baking soda solution to neutralize any organic residue and rinsed with distilled water. Step 2 is plate insertion, 2 positive plates and 2 negative plates of cast lead antimony grid with applied and formed active material, separated by glass fiber mat cut to plate dimensions, assembled in alternating positive-negative sequence and lowered into the jar as a unit held together by temporary rubber bands that are removed after electrolyte filling. Step 3 is terminal installation, lead terminal lugs cast integrally with the plate grids, bent over the jar rim and connected externally through copper wire connections to the battery bank terminal bus. Step 4 is electrolyte filling, prepared sulfuric acid solution at 1.265 specific gravity with lignosulfonate addition, poured carefully into the jar to a level covering the plate tops by approximately ½ inch. Step 5 is initial formation cycling, 72 hours of low-rate charge and discharge through the nichrome resistance wire current limiter. Step 6 is capacity verification, a timed discharge at a known current load to confirm the cell delivers its rated ampere-hour capacity before installation into the working battery bank. The battery bank configuration that the Lagrange County farmer used to power his farm lighting system assembled 12 individual mason jar cells in a series parallel arrangement, 2 parallel strings of 6 cells in series, producing a nominal 12-volt bank voltage at approximately 240 ampere-hours of usable capacity. At the farm lighting load that Graber documented, kerosene lamp replacement LED equivalents drawing approximately 15 watts per fixture across 4 fixtures, the 240 ampere-hour bank provided approximately 48 hours of continuous lighting from a full charge. The wind generator recharged the bank from full discharge in approximately 18 hours of average Lagrange County wind conditions. The charge regulation method that prevents overcharge without electronic controllers is a voltage-triggered gravity switch, a float mechanism inside a small auxiliary cell connected in parallel with the bank that physically disconnects the generator output when electrolyte-specific gravity reaches the full charge threshold. It contains no electronics, it requires no programming. It was documented in the same 1923 Edison Bulletin as the lignosulfonate additive and has been in continuous use in Lagrange County Amish battery installations since that bulletin's findings reached the community through the Agricultural Extension Network of the 1920s. Dr. Hartwell published a brief technical note on her analysis of Graber's Lagrange County documentation in the Journal of Power Sources in 2018. The note was 4 pages long. It received no citations from any battery manufacturer research division. Tesla's battery research publication record for 2018 lists 23 papers on lithium cell chemistry. It lists 0 papers on lead antimony cell longevity. The Lagrange County cell that prompted Hartwell's analysis was still cycling in 2018 when her paper appeared. It had been cycling for 44 years. The mason jar it lives in cost approximately $1.20 at the time of its purchase. The glass fiber separator cost approximately $0.30 cut from a standard insulation bat. The lead came from wheel weights pulled from a salvage bin. The lignosulfonate came from the ash of the hardwood fires that heated the farmhouse through 44 Indiana winters. Leave a comment telling us what energy load you would power first with a mason jar battery bank on your property. Subscribe now, because our next documentary investigates the Amish hand-built solar food dehydrator that preserves the complete nutritional profile of fresh produce for 18 months without electricity, without chemical preservatives, and without the $4.2 billion commercial food preservation industry that replaced it the moment shelf-stable processed food became more profitable to sell than the knowledge of how to make your own.